Hello, my dear gardening friends. Now, when the garden is still sleeping, it's a good idea to look at the past year to see what worked in the garden, what didn't, learn from your mistakes, and successfully plan for next year. So, today I'm walking with you in my still winter sleeping garden, thinking about the past year and preparing for the next. I must say that last year was quite busy in my garden. I worked hard to create several permanent structures. I ordered a lot of roses, and generally last year was quite successful and there were a lot of developments. We had very warm winter, and usually warm winter symbolizes a lot of bed bugs were not killed by winter cold. And I suspect that this year would be high in pests pressure in the garden. So the number one suffering tree in my backyard is this eastern hemlock. Our eastern hemlock was here when we moved into the house, and it's a fairly well developed big tree, but the problem is it has a woolly adelgid sucking insects on it, and these insects are invasive. They wiped out the whole forests of eastern hemlocks, and they are a serious pest if the tree is stressed. Well, I like to consider my tree not stressed, since hemlocks do love water and they thrive in somewhat moist conditions. And because I have my arborvitaes there growing in somewhat shady conditions there, I do water them a lot, and as a result, my tree, I hope so, is staying alive and looks like it's doing fine despite all the infestation. So I suspect this year the infestation would be huge. The way out of it would be to apply systemic stuff to the root system, some sort of a soil drench, and I really don't want to use systemic pesticides in my garden. Another way, I can talk to the arborist and see what they advise me to do. But so far, my hemlock is doing okay, so maybe I will see how this year will be going. My roses last year, I introduced, I believe, 12 different varieties, and all the babies are doing fine but one. I ordered 2 Shropshire Leads, and one was eaten by the rabbit twice. So, you know, for the beginner gardener, for the beginner rosarians, we have to understand that roses, when they go through their uprooting from their original location where they were growing at the nursery field, they go through the shock. Then they have the shipping time, the cold storage time, and then they have to start their life all over again in a new garden. So that's a fairly big shock for a plant. And if we have another shock coming, rabbits eating half of the foliage or all of the foliage, some plants might not recover from it. So that happened to my Shropshire Lead rose. I planted 2 of them because I want these beautiful cascading climbing roses there in that corner of my garden. In that case, if you see that rose went into the non-existent mode, don't throw it away, wait for next year. So that's what I did with my rose. I waited for this year, and I just checked on it, and I see that rose leafed out little very shy leaves, but it is living, you know. It probably will have a much slower start in life, but at least that life is saved and rose will be growing. So as a result, I protected that rose from rabbits, and hopefully 2 of them will be maturing this year very well. This area here under the arch doesn't really look very attractive. This is the first year I am overwintering with my arch here, and I installed it last summer, very successful project, I think, for my new dawn roses, which are planted on both sides. But in the middle of winter, all this area looks quite dreary. And the fact that I planted spring bulbs is not going to help right now. So, you know what came to my mind? I'm going to elevate slowly, year after year, the level of the soil here. And we'll make it maybe 1 foot higher. This way, this area and area right here where my baby boxwoods are growing will be more interesting. I know right now it looks quite non-appealing, and boxwoods look quite bronzed. Don't worry, bronzing will go away the minute warm weather appears. Another big development which happened last year in my garden, I moved into the front with my roses. For those who are new to my garden, I have a very secluded back garden and very open front of the house, as majority of American houses style is. So I thought to myself, so far all my roses for all these years were planted at the back. So why wouldn't I go out into the front of my garden and plant roses? And you know what? After 2 or 3 years of going and planting roses in the front, I might be thinking it's a mistake, because regularly those roses are harassed by deer, by dogs, by who knows what. I don't even know what's happening. Near the front door, I planted beautiful Eden rose, and it's a climber with heavy, beautiful flowers. That area doesn't get a lot of morning sun, but still I think Eden would be doing there well. So it was growing so well and developing so many beautiful leaves. And then one day I got up and there's just one stick sticking out. Listen, thanks God, deer doesn't eat stems, only leaves. So, you know what, if that offense is going to happen over and over and over again with all of my roses in the front, I probably will just give in and move all my roses to the back, which is very secluded, has gates, and nothing can get to the back of my garden. Another mistake of maybe several last years, we have 3 maple trees growing in front of our garden, and for many years they were baby trees. And of course, I'm falling into the same mistake as many gardeners are. They are assuming that trees are not to become huge, especially maple trees. Maple trees are famous for being humongous. So now I'm looking at the shadow from those trees coming closer and closer and closer to the house. And I have a feeling that this year the shadow would be coming to the front windows. And of course I had this wonderful idea that in the front of my house I want to have roses blooming with boxwood hedges under the windows, looking into the house, saying hello in the morning to me, sitting there reading my book and smelling the beautiful aroma of wonderful roses. Well, that fairy tale story I don't think is going to happen, because roses do not like shade and they're not going to thrive there in shade, and I assume that my trees are going to grow even stronger. And now I am thinking to myself that I have to slowly turn all that front area into a shady garden, which is slightly annoying, because I have already so many roses growing there. But if that's case scenario, I'm going to learn from my mistake, and please you too learn from my mistake, and that would be another reason why I will be moving all the sun-loving plants back into the back of the garden. Plans for next year would be to make sure that all my baby roses are growing very well, going into their 2nd year successfully. I also am going big time into vegetable gardening. Half of my childhood I was growing vegetables in the vegetable garden of my parents in Ukraine, in mountainous area. So here the space is not big. I have 4 raised beds. So I'm going to utilize every inch of those raised beds this year. And I'm going to create 2 more structures for my roses. I have a rambling rose, which I just introduced last year, my first rambler. And it is vigorous, it's growing very well on the side of my garden, and it needs a very strong support because ramblers can be very vigorous. And it's not the most vigorous rambler, it's somewhere in the middle. The name of it is Adelaide d'Orleans. It's a pink, whitish, pink rose going into the white. So the rambler would be growing on the side of my garden, and I need to build support for it. I do like to use treated wood and cover it with stain for it to look aged. That's what I did with this arch. So probably I will be doing something like that on the side of my garden to support the rambler. And I'm going to enjoy my garden immensely this year. The joy of gardening is just a beautiful gift, and I will be very happy to share my gardening adventures with you. Please do subscribe. Happy gardening, and we will see you in my next video.